I'm Eddie Muller. Welcome to Noir Alley. Our film this week has a special place in my personal history. It was more than 20 years ago that I programmed my inaugural festival devoted to film noir, and The Narrow Margin was the first movie I screened. This was in Hollywood at the legendary Egyptian Theater, Sid Grauman's second movie theater, but the first to be known as a movie palace. And what made the evening extra special was that our guests that night were the film's producer, Stanley Rubin, its director, Richard Fleischer, and its star, Marie Windsor. They reminisced about how The Narrow Margin, made in 1950 but not released until 1952, had been the breakthrough they were all looking for in Hollywood. Separately, Rubin and Fleischer had toiled for years in B units, and Windsor, once touted by MGM as the next Joan Crawford, had never had a part this fabulous, a true star-making turn. It was Stanley Rubin who fostered the project. He'd had an agreement with RKO to both write and produce the film Macau, but studio chief Howard Hughes pulled the rug out from under him. As a makeup, Rubin was given his pick of any B property in development at the studio. He chose an original story called Target by Martin Goldsmith and Jack Leonard. Now, noir fans might recognize Martin Goldsmith as the author of Detour, often described as the greatest B movie ever. Well, Stanley Rubin might argue that the film he produced from a Goldsmith story is even better. His first move, a smart one, was signing up director Dick Fleischer and his regular writing partner, Earl Felton. Rubin had been impressed by the string of exciting pictures these two had produced for RKO, brisk and bruising B films like Trapped and Armored Car Robbery. Under Rubin's stewardship, The Narrow Margin would be a cut above those films, a nervous A in industry lingo. This is also what's known as a can picture, a story taking place almost entirely within the confines of a moving vehicle. It can be a plane, a bus, a submarine. In this case, it's a train traveling from Chicago to Los Angeles. Among the passengers is a surly cop assigned to haul in a mobster's wife to testify in a racketeering case. Various parties, of course, want to make sure she never makes it to the coast. It only took Fleischer 13 days and a budget of $230,000, virtually all of it spent on RKO sets, to deliver a picture with as much style and inventiveness as any film of its time. But as brilliant as Fleischer's work is, the main event in The Narrow Margin is the face-off between two film noir heavyweights, granite-faced and gravel-voiced Charles McGraw and sultry and statuesque Marie Windsor. These two take hard-boiled to a whole nother level, slinging the sass as well as anybody ever.
What are you gonna do, shoot something for breakfast?
Sure, name it.
Eggs, bacon, toast, a bucket of coffee, and some cigarettes. I'm famished, Brown.
Okay, I'll share it with you. I don't want them counting trays. Here's some cigarettes.
McGraw had been acting in movies since the early 40s, routinely cast as a cop or a hoodlum. His career fully set sail on the black tide of noir that rose up in Hollywood after World War II. He played memorable hard cases in films such as The Killers, T-Men, and Border Incident. But it wasn't until The Narrow Margin that anyone had the inspired idea of letting McGraw take the lead, sticking him in virtually every scene. To say that he crushes it is entirely appropriate. Now, Marie Windsor traveled the distaff side of the same road, a Utah beauty queen who toiled in the trenches at MGM, the promise of starring roles always dangled but never delivered. Marie's problem, as she was told over and over again by agents and producers, was that she was too tall, too voluptuous, and just too damn sexy. She'd never be cast as anything but the other woman. Now, in truth, Marie never did have a role that genuinely challenged her as an actress. She could simply roll out of bed and be all the femme fatale you ever wanted. And it's in that mode she burned up the screen in two undisputed classics, The Killing, coming to Noir Alley later in the year, and The Narrow Margin. In time, Marie came to be known as the Queen of the Bees. And as she always said, with a rueful smile, it's nice to be queen of something. As you're about to see, the narrow margin has a lot of kinetic energy. It must have run in the Fleischer family's blood. Richard Fleischer's father, Max, and his brother Dave were the main rivals to Walt Disney, creating the animated classics Betty Boop and Popeye the Sailor. And Fleischer shows a similar knack for clever staging and fast-paced action. In the narrow margin, the direction of several scenes is nothing short of miraculous, given the time and budget constraints.
You look pretty. What have you been doing, falling off the train?
Director of photography George Discant deserves a carload of credit for rising to the challenges this production presented. When shooting wrapped, everyone involved knew they had made something special, including, unfortunately, studio boss Howard Hughes, who loved this film to a fault. But that's a story for after the film. Right now, it's time to get your ticket punched. Climb aboard for the narrow margin.